the thought that I gave to you was to think of something that only brings temporary happiness or satisfaction, something that doesn't give a permanent boost, but that's only just a temporary satisfying thing. Anybody think of something like that? There's a number of things that come to mind. Anybody think of something that they want to share? We talked last week about how so much of the things, and even at the beginning of chapter 2, mirth, partying, and all of those kinds of things, they only provide temporary satisfaction. So anybody have ideas or something like that? Food. Okay, I don't know who said it, but somewhere over here. Food, that's one of those things. Now, depending on your metabolism, you can be hungry 45 minutes later or a few hours. But food, it only brings temporary boosts. Eventually that wears off and you're hungry again. Anything else? Money. That's a big one. Doesn't matter how much you have, the boost that it gives you is only temporary. Eventually either it gets used or taken away, and it loses that boost that it gives you. Anything else? Pardon? A new car. That new car smell quickly goes away. If you have a dog or a baby, it's replaced by all kinds of other smells. But a new car feeling, that goes away. Anything else? We'll leave it open for one more thing here. There is a non-stop stream of entertainment that gets pumped out because it just doesn't do it. Doesn't satisfy. It's only a temporary boost that it gives you. If we were to use drug terms, it only provides a temporary fix. All of those things, just temporary. So that's one of the things that we looked at last week, just temporary boosts to things. So as we jump into it, the point of the book of Ecclesiastes, the question that Solomon asked, and he conducted all kinds of experiments to figure out, is to answer these two questions. Is life worth living? Is there something worth living for? And what is the purpose of life? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Both of those questions are things that every single person on earth wants to know. Everybody wants to know that. This week we're going to look at the second half of Ecclesiastes chapter 2, where he conducts a couple very unique experiments and then gives us the results, what we should do with that information. So we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, and I'm going to read verses 12 through 17. That's our first section here. The first part says, he says, I turned myself to behold wisdom and madness and folly. For what can man do that cometh after the king? Even that which hath been already done. Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as far as light excelleth darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all. Then said I in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me. Why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, that this also is vanity. For there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever, seeing that which now is in the days to come shall all be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man? As the fool. Therefore I hated life, because the work that is wrought under the sun is grievous unto me, for all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Last week, we saw Solomon's experiments about whether wisdom or foolishness would provide lifelong satisfaction. So we looked at both of these things and said, can either one of them provide a lasting sense of fulfillment and satisfaction? His conclusion last week, both are empty and cannot satisfy. But he wanted to conduct another experiment to see whether there was a benefit. If both don't satisfy, fulfillment, lifelong fulfillment, is there a benefit to one over the other while I'm alive? He conducts another experiment with wisdom and folly. But this time, as I made mention, his perspective changes a little bit. Previously, he was looking at, do they provide lifelong fulfillment? Can they sustain my life and provide purpose? Now he looks at things in light of death. So basically, I have a short lifespan. Both don't provide lifelong satisfaction, but is there a benefit to one over the other? Because even though both wisdom and folly don't provide lifelong fulfillment, perhaps one gains better bonuses than the other. So this is his second experiment. And he says wisdom is most definitely better. The very next verse, as he introduces this next experiment, he says, "Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly as far as light excelleth darkness." Wisdom is definitely better. The word that he uses is that wisdom is of a higher quality. It's just better all around. Because basically he says you spare yourself a lot of problems. Whereas a wise man has his eyes in his head and looks out. A fool, his eyes are someplace else and he's just in darkness. He can't see what's coming. He can't maneuver around things and make wise decisions to help his life. So there's definitely in this life a benefit to wisdom. But then as he conducted this new experiment, he came across something that frustrated him to no end. So this is a brand new experiment. But the thing that he found, he was wise, and there's definitely a benefit to being wise, but he became frustrated because life is not fair. And whether he was wise or foolish, the same things happen to everybody. He says the fool is struggling with the same things that I'm struggling with. I'm the wisest person that has ever lived, but I still have to deal with difficulties and with loss and with all of these other different things that happen in this life. So at the end of this second experiment, he looks at things and he says, it's not fair. I've applied myself to be wise, but it's not fair because the same stuff happens to both of us. That's what verse 15 says. As it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me. Why was I then more wise? This is a frustration that people have all the time. You have somebody who is very, very good, who has committed themselves to just being a good person. And then they're devastated by their doctor telling them that they have cancer. And then you have somebody who everybody knows is a fool. They don't care about God. And maybe they do have cancer or maybe they don't. So Solomon looked at life and he said, the same stuff happens to both. So even though there's a benefit to wisdom, it's still not fair. It's still not enough. In view of death, in view of the years that I have here, life without God, he says, it just makes me angry. Because it's not fair. It's not right. And if you have nothing beyond this life, then the fact that the evil and the foolish person can succeed in life, sometimes more than or sometimes because of a good person, take advantage of them, so that's just not fair. So his conclusion in his second experiment was, life's just not fair. So is there a benefit to living as a wise person? Yeah. But still, at the end of the second experiment, I just can't. Wisdom doesn't provide enough to give me fulfillment in this life. If I just rely on my wisdom and on goodness and my sense of right and wrong, if I just rely on that stuff instead of God, I'm just going to come to the conclusion that life's not fair and it's just a horrible thing. Because everybody has to deal with these same problems. So that was his first experiment. Now he comes to the second experiment. So that's Next he comes in verses 18 through 23, and he deals with work again. So again, last week we talked about work, how that working hard and giving yourself to achieving great things, that doesn't provide lifelong fulfillment. If you rely on that instead of God, it's not going to provide enough to keep you going. So now he tries it with a different perspective, just like the first time. So verse 18 through 23, yea, I hated all my labor which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. And who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Yet shall he have rule over all of my labor, wherein I have labored, and wherein I have showed myself wise under the sun. He says, this also is vanity. Therefore I went about to cause my heart to despair of all the labor which I took under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is in wisdom, and in knowledge, and in equity. Yet to a man that hath not labored therein shall he leave it for his portion. This also is vanity and a great evil. For what hath man of all of his labor and of the vexation of his heart, wherein he hath labored under the sun? For all his days are sorrows, and his travail grief. His heart taketh not rest in the night. This is also vanity. So first of all, he redid his experiment with wisdom, and he said just, life's not fair. Now he comes to work, and he has changed his view of things. He found that work was unsatisfying when you relied on that. Now he is coming to rely on what happens to the fruit of my labor, all the things that I have done. After I have accomplished things, is there satisfaction in some of those things and my achievements? And right off the bat, he tells us his frustration. He says, work is not fair, because there is no way for me to guarantee that the person who comes after me is going to be worth all of the work that I did, if they're going to be wise or not. You have no way to guarantee that someone won't waste all of your hard work when you pass it on. Have you ever worked hard on something just to have someone swoop in and take the credit for it? Or have you ever worked really hard on something just to have someone come by and knock it all down? Eric has stacking blocks. There's 5 little cups that get smaller as they go. And I sometimes stack them up into a tower. And his favorite thing is to come across and just go, ha ha ha, and knock them all down. Sometimes that happens in life. You put all your effort into doing something and accomplishing things and building something, and someone else comes along, knocks it down. So if you're relying on work to provide a sense of satisfaction, Solomon says, I can't guarantee that all of the things that I have achieved, that someone else isn't going to destroy them. That when I die, I'm going to pass on all of these things to my children, and then they're going to do a good job of looking after them. Solomon was right to be concerned. His son caused the division in the kingdom, and the whole of Israel split in two. So you can accomplish great things, but your accomplishments are then left for the next person. And you have no way of guaranteeing that they're going to make wise decisions. So Solomon accomplished a lot more than most. He looked at all this stuff and he said, it's just not fair. I've worked so hard for all of these different things, and now as I get towards the end of my life, I have no guarantee that someone wise is going to take over and use this stuff well. If you rely on your work to provide satisfaction, you're going to come to the conclusion that it's not fair. Came across this quote. It says, viewed in the light of the impermanence of its fruit, Solomon asked whether a man's labor in this life, whether the things he puts his back into, if those accomplishments were really worth it all. In the final analysis, he declared all that really resulted from it was the expenditure of a lot of painful labor, restless activity, which is fruitful or futile and meaningless. First of all, he said that life is not fair, and now he says work is not fair. Because you can't determine that whoever comes after you will be wise, and you can't guarantee that what you have done will last. You can work your whole life and leave all of your achievements and your effort to someone who doesn't deserve it. Again, when you remove God from the picture, you are left with a very depressing and frustrating situation. If you're relying on good times to get you through life, if you're relying on your wisdom, making wise decisions to get you to the place where you have fulfillment and satisfaction in a good life, then you're going to find that life's not fair. Because the same stuff, bad, happens to you as to the person down the street who's not living right. And if you're relying on your work, you're going to find that it's just not fair, because you can give every ounce of your effort and then have to leave it to someone who may just knock it all back down. So what was his conclusion? And that's where verse 24 through 26 come in, where he says, his conclusion, there is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw, that it was from the hand of God. For who can eat, or who else can hasten hereunto more than I? For God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom, knowledge, and joy, but to the sinner he giveth travail to gather, to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. This also is vanity, vexation of spirit. His conclusion, the best thing that you can do is to rely on God for your fulfillment, and then enjoy the gifts that God has given. Only when you rely on lifetime fulfillment from God can you learn to be able to enjoy and take joy in things of life. If you place the burden of fulfilling your expectations, fulfilling your life and finding joy, if you place the burden of that on the decisions that you make, on the work that you accomplish, they won't be able to satisfy. And you'll just end up thinking that life is not fair and that it was a waste of your time. But if you rely on your fulfillment from God, then you can take joy in your work. You can take joy in the achievements that you have made. You can take joy in your hard work, the things that you have been able to accumulate. You can take joy in the time that you spend together with others. Now, verse 24 isn't saying life is frustrating, so go out and get drunk. That's not what verse 24 is saying. What it's saying is there is joy in life when you remove the burden of finding fulfillment from it. Trust in God, rely on God, because God has given you gifts that are meant to be enjoyed. Work is meant to be enjoyed. God gave it to us so that we could enjoy it. Spending time with friends, that's one of the things that God has given to us to be able to enjoy. So is it worth it and satisfying to be wise and to make wise decisions? Yes. Is it satisfying to work hard to accomplish projects and to accomplish milestones? Yes. But only if you're relying on God for lifetime fulfillment. Because in and of themselves, nothing can actually provide enough to fulfill us except God. But God intended for us to find enjoyment in life. There is a big difference when you rely on God versus when you rely on anything else. Because only God has the fortitude to be able to take all of your expectations, all of your needs, and satisfy them. Nothing else can. And that's Solomon's experiment. Without God, can this provide what I need? Nope. Well, let's see about redoing those experiments, and is there a benefit to wisdom? Yep. But if I rely on that for fulfillment, will it do what I need it to do? Nope. So let's find out if work or laziness satisfies. Nope, both of them don't. Work is better, though, so let's redo the experiment and see if work and my achievements can do it. Nope. But trust in God, and they can provide joy in life. There's also something very important that I want you to see in verse 26 here. It says, "For God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he giveth travail to gather, to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. This also is vanity and vexation of spirit." I want to read to you what one commentary said, and I put it up on the screen for you. It says, "Solomon stated that God's disposition of wealth and the enjoyment of one's labor and its fruits are based on whether a man is pleasing to God or is a sinner, as is clear from the words, the man who pleases God and the sinner, elsewhere in Ecclesiastes. This implies that a person will be judged on the basis of his ethical behavior and his trust in God or lack of it." So what he is saying is, a sinner who does not know God obviously is not going to rely on God. Therefore, no matter what they try, they will never find satisfaction in it. But a believer, someone who trusts in God, the man who pleases God, because of that, they therefore have the opportunity to enjoy the things in life that God intended for them. When you remove God from the picture, nothing is going to bring you joy. With God in the picture, you can. God is the key. He's the linchpin. So if you hope to enjoy the things that God has given to us, that He intends for us to enjoy, you have to have God in it. You have to be trusting in God. Because when you remove God, nothing is going to provide what you want and what you need. Your ability to enjoy life is a blessing from God. A blessing that God gives to those who want to please Him. If you're living in sin, it won't matter what job you have. It won't matter how large or small your bank account is. It won't matter how wise you are or how foolish you are. It does not matter. You won't find satisfaction and enjoyment in life if you have removed God from it. Warren Wiersbe, and I put this up there for you as well, and I'll close with this. He says, apart from God, there can be no true enjoyment or blessing or enrichment of life. It is good to have the things that money can buy, provided you don't lose the things that money can't buy. Does money provide satisfaction? No. Can you enjoy money and work and wisdom? Yes, provided that you're trusting in God. That's how things work. That's his conclusion to his first set of experiments. I put this up there last week, and you'll probably see it multiple times. Free your job, your projects, your hobbies, your things from the responsibility of making you happy. Only then will you be able to enjoy all of those things. Everything in your life has been gifted to you by God for you to find joy and satisfaction in them. but you never will unless you're trusting in God. So free all of this stuff from the responsibility of making you happy. Rest and trust in God to make you happy. Then you'll be able to enjoy all of the blessings from life that God wants. We'll pray, we'll finish up, and then we'll open it up for some questions. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to be able to gather this morning to look at the experiments that Solomon took on and to see his results. This is as practical as it gets, so help us, Lord, to take this stuff to heart, to look hard at our lives, to see if we are relying on things that just don't have the strength to support them, or if we're relying on you to find satisfaction in life, because you're the only one that can bear that responsibility. So we thank you and we praise you. In your name.